Another day in Berlin, round 8 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship, coming from Germany's largest and capital city, the Berlin Wall, the historic landmark at the center of it, and also lots of other beautiful architecture around this wonderful place that we've been coming to since the very first season. 2015 was the first time that Formula E raced at the Tempelhof Airport. We had one little race, which was in Alexanderplatz, down by the TV tower, but ever since then, been at Berlin Tempelhof Airport, a few miles to the south. This is the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship, round 8, the 2023 SABIC Berlin E-Prix. Very good morning, everybody. Just gone 8 o'clock in Berlin, and we've got another half-hour free practice session ahead of the second race of the weekend. And after this, we head to Monaco in 2 weeks' time. A doubleheader in Jakarta, a first Formula E race in Portland in the United States, and then doubleheaders in Rome and London to round out this 16-race Formula E World Championship season. You can see Mitch Evans is on a winning streak at the moment. One in Sao Paulo 3 weeks ago, and one yesterday afternoon in a tremendous fight for the victory. Jean-Eric Verne arriving this morning, all smiles. 7th place for him yesterday, despite having a bit of contact and being sent towards the back. Sebastian Buemi still looking for his first podium. Took pole position yesterday. Pascal Wehrlein managed to come through the order after qualifying 15th. He still managed to finish 6th. And you can see a little bit of drizzle here at various points, but it was the two Jaguars who were the stars of yesterday. A 1-2 for Mitch Evans and Sam Bird. And as far as the championship is concerned, that promotes Evans up to 4th in the standings. Bird is 6th. They're all still a bit of a way from Pascal Wehrlein, who has got a 23-point margin over Nick Cassidy in 2nd position, but it feels like just a matter of time before one of those 2nd through 8th, really, placed drivers gets a big haul of points and closes the gap in on Wehrlein. But Wehrlein keeps coming through to finish 7th in Sao Paulo, to finish 6th in Berlin. Stoffel van Dorn, 12th, the reigning champion, not picking up any points yesterday, in fact retiring after an accident with Dan Tixon. Nico Müller and Robin Freitz, the only two drivers yet to get off the mark. And that means that Abt Cupra are at the bottom of the team standings, because they are the only team yet to get off the mark. Up at the top, it is the Porsches. It's very close, though, between Envision and Jaguar in 2nd and 3rd. DS Penske now up into 4th, but Avalanche Andretti led the championship after the opening race of the season. Now they're down in. My name is Jack Nicholls. Alan McNish is alongside me, the former Formula 1 driver, 3-time Le Mans winner, former Audi team principal in Formula E, and we're back in Berlin again. It's the same way around this time. Done it reverse in the past, but it's the same track as yesterday, but different conditions still.
Yep, it's always a changing circuit in that respect. The circuit, though, we all know, we've done it, as you say, in different directions. It's got a long, tightening first corner, then a tight section through 2, 3, 4, where there was a lot of incidents yesterday. But you need to get a good exit for the back straight down into turn 6, where the attack mode is on your right-hand side. Power through that very quick turn 7 and also turn 8. Turn 8 used to be flat last year, but with the faster cars this year, you have to take a lift. Hairpins at turn 9 and then a long, difficult turn 10. Hard on the tyres, Jack, and that was one of the complaints yesterday, was that the drivers were struggling to warm up the tyres, especially for qualifying. But today, it's a bit humid.
It is a very different day, isn't it? You can see a lot of rain overnight, and the track is a bit damp. Obviously, it's not soaked by the looks of things, but you'll see when the cars go out that there you can see that there are puddles around. Track temperature's 13 degrees, air temperature 14 degrees, some drops of water on the lens as well, but the session gets underway now. Green flag at the end of the pit lane, and we'll see whether everyone heads straight out or whether they decide to give it a little bit of time or not. There you can see the TV tower, which is at Alexanderplatz down in the center. And yeah, cars straight out on circuit, so let's see what unfolds. You can see a little bit of spray coming off them. The two black and white Jaguars at the front of the field, Evans and Bird, just in behind the two McLarens, and already quite deep in there. You can hear some of the wheel spin as well.
I think this is the point that everybody wants to go out onto the circuit to find out what it's like in the wet, but also to find out what these tyres are like in the wet, as one of the McLarens has stopped there at the exit of turn 2, 3. Don't think they've gone into the wall or anything, but
René Rast.
but definitely one of the McLarens has stopped there. And yeah, he's just pulled off to the side. But they haven't actually done any real running on the wet tyres in the wet.
Yeah, it's the same tyre as they would have used in the dry. It's an all-weather tyre, these Hankooks. So new learnings for all the drivers out there, and you can see it is damp. There's no doubt about that. It's not absolutely undrivable in it by any stretch, but there is definitely some water down there as they come through the hairpin.
Oh, there's a bit of spray coming off the tyres. That's what they're designed to do, is to evacuate water, to lift it up and throw it up into the air, which means that you're not aquaplaning effectively. And so circuit's easily capable of driving, no big puddles.
Hey, all team managers from race control, just be aware that we still have a car drivers left at effectively the apex of turn 3 off to the side. Obey the flags, please.
René Rast is doing a full power reset to then try and get the car going again. You can see the McLaren there on the left-hand side as his teammate comes past him. 28 minutes remaining in this half-hour session. So a power cycle so often resets the problems, doesn't it? It's quite surprising.
Yeah, Control-Alt-Delete in old language, and it's basically re-baselines all the electronics, and these cars have got a significant amount of electronics in them to run even things like the braking system and the distribution of the brakes from the front to the rear. It's all brake-by-wire. So here we are, we're ready. It's all ready from going out the pits, basically.
Yeah, he's just got nothing, has he?
Well, he had a little bit of something when he touched the throttle, but it was nothing of real significance.
So Jake Hughes fighting with the car already as he comes down into the hairpin of turn 9. Up the inside of him goes the Envision of Nick Cassidy.
Yeah, but the McLaren struggled yesterday with traction. If we remember back even in the dry, it just didn't seem to get the power down very well. Now that can be one of two things. It can be actually the mechanical grip, or it can be the way that the throttle application is, so that it basically puts all of the power in a very aggressive way instead of a very smooth way. And right now with these low grip conditions, you'll want something that is nice and gentle when you're pressing the throttle, that it doesn't come in with a bang.
And how much can you change that sort of regulation-wise? Because if it's like, I haven't really looked at the forecast for today, but let's say hypothetically it could be dry later. Are there things you can change in between now and then, or when you end up in Parc Fermé?
No, there's points when you can change. So you've got one software version that you can put in every race. So you can develop software through the season, but you've got to homologate a version per event. And so in that respect, however, there is some very small things that you can do to try to maybe, I would say, massage and smooth it. But as a general principle, you do want a very linear throttle application in these sort of conditions, so the driver knows exactly when he presses that little bit more, exactly what he gets.
Nick Cassidy, 5th yesterday in the Envision, was involved in the scrap at the front for quite a while, as was everybody really, and he's now coming up into the final corner. Oh, he's locked the left front there, and he's gone in a little deep, gets it back and heads back down the start-finish straight.
You know, these conditions seem to be a leveler in a lot of occasions, and I'd just like to point everybody to who's quickest.
Yes.
Robin Frins in the Apt Cupra. Now Robin just drives by the seat of his pants, fantastic natural talent, and if there is ever a condition that is perfect for him, it's this. It's new for everybody, the circuit's wet, it's slippery, the tyres are not quite up to temperature, and he's able just to sort of get it thrown around there, and quickest. I'm sure they'll be taking pictures of the timing screens and hoping that that's what it stays like for the later in the day.
Sam Bird is frustrated with that yellow flag still being out at turn 3, because Rast's car is still there, and because they're having to back off every lap still. Apt 1-2 at the moment, and now there is a red flag. So they obviously couldn't get Rast's car going again, and the red flag is deployed, and everybody will return to the pit lane. But Bird, strong race yesterday, finished in 2nd, 3rd and 2nd in the last 2 races, his 3rd podium of the season. But we've got the red flag because René Rast he had power when he left the pits. He was able to, he was able to drive out of the garage and the pit lane, but then once he got to the end of the pit lane exit, that's where he ran out. Ian James, team principal.
Okay, René, so yeah, obviously we we're not sure at the moment, so stand by, but we're going to need to be recovered and not try and drive any further.
Stephen Lane on the radio. There, I must have just come past. Who's that? Just come past the Rene Rast. It was Edo Mortara, I think it must have been. But in the Maserati, felt like he should have been going into the pits by then, but maybe had just come past the timing line. The marshal's heading out to recover Rast's car. We may get a session extension. Depends how long the recovery takes. Although actually it's able to move, so it looks like we should be able to roll him out quite quickly. So listen to him here, leaving the pit lane. And there it goes.
A sort of oscillation, and you could hear the noise rising up very gently, and then it had a small cut for a tenth of a second, and then never seemed to recover from there. So that's an electronic issue. I would suggest throttle or something like that.
Rast was involved in that shunt yesterday with Van Dorn and Tictum, so not sure how much they've changed the car overnight, because Stoffel Van Dorn, for example, has had the complete tub change after yesterday, so it could be when they rebuilt Rast's car, something hasn't quite gone according to plan. It's Cassidy, the man who is now second in the championship standings. Mitch Evans, the race winner yesterday in the Jaguar, the only driver to have started every race in the top 10 so far this season, Mitch Evans, and he has the best qualifying average of anyone on the grid, which is 5th.
He's always had a very strong qualifying record, even when maybe the race performance wasn't quite there. He was always quick in qualifying.
Tough day yesterday for Jake Dennis. It looked as though he was in the fight for the win, honestly, but got frustrated behind the Maseratis and ended up in the barrier.
Yeah, and then had that incident and has got a 5-place grid penalty, resulting in taking out Antonio Felix da Costa in the incident when he went off. So it's been a tough day, tough weekend, but a tough, I would say, middle part to the season for them as well after a sterling start. They just need to have, as he said actually on Thursday, a clean weekend.
Yeah.
A little bit harder to do than actually you can imagine.
And I think that for Dennis, there's every driver's got their sort of bad luck stories, as it were. Da Costa, one of them yesterday, to be honest, getting wiped out by Dennis, but he could have had huge results in Hyderabad and, well, not so much Cape Town, but also Sao Paulo. There's Sebastian Buemi now, makes his way out onto the circuit. No podiums yet for Buemi this season. He's finished in the points in all but one race. 5th, 4th, he's had 2 4th-place finishes, 2 pole positions. Hasn't quite been able to convert it to the podium. Even yesterday, missing out on the podium.
At the line.
Well, at the line, yeah, exactly.
Looked like he was going to sneak past Gunter coming out to the final corner, but didn't quite make it. So it was very, very close. But it was still a good weekend for Envision yesterday, because they picked up good points with both cars. Had Cassidy leapfrog to second in the championship, as you said, and that pulls him a little bit closer to ultimately Pascal Wehrlein, who I think had also, like Antonio Felix da Costa until the incident, had a fantastic recovery.
Yeah, very good job yesterday from Wehrlein, as we've seen so many times this season. Cassidy still waiting in the pit lane. Quite a few still in the pit lane. Freitz and Muller, Nato, Van Dorn, Cassidy, Evans, De Grassi and Hughes. The rest of the drivers out on circuit, so a bit of a split on whether to go out on track or not, which is quite interesting with 20 minutes to go and new track conditions. Max Gunter scored more points yesterday than he had in his previous 23 Formula E races. 15 yesterday, picked up 10 in the previous 23.
That's a statistic.
Yeah.
Quite a shocking statistic, actually, for the previous races, but definitely a statistic. As you see, just turning in so aggressively to try and get some temperature. The other thing to note is that pretty much all the drivers, especially out of the last corner, I noticed, taking very, very different lines to they would normally in the dry. And so you can take what historically has been known as the karting line, which is round the outside or doing a big cutback. But in corners like here, turn 7, then they have to take the traditional racing lines. There's just not enough room.
On board with Gunther, who became the first driver to take the Maserati name to the podium in 66 years. Last time a Maserati was on the podium was Juan Manuel Fangio at the German Grand Prix in 1957.
Okay.
In terms of single-seater, you know, championship, world championship podiums. Gunther making his way around the circuit, coming out over the start-finish line. And down towards turn 1. And of course, you can keep up with all the action today on the Formula E app or head to fiaformulae.com/live. And you can follow all of today's action unfolding, as well as obviously being here with us. Sasha Fenestraz in the Nissan. What happened to him yesterday, Fenestraz? I think he just didn't qualify very well and then didn't really do anything in the race.
Yeah, he was sort of mid-pack. He was always on the back end of the pack that was fighting into the top 10. And so it was not necessarily a great weekend for all the Nissan powertrains, because the 2 McLarens have that powertrain as well. And Jake Hughes had a bit of a struggle, and so did Rennie Rast Williamson.
I should clarify, I think that Maserati stat is single-seaters.
Yeah.
Single-seaters.
Yeah, I can imagine.
17 minutes and 40 seconds to go. Fright's still quickest at the moment, and 3/10 ahead of Oliver Rowland.
Just to give you a feel, that's about 10 seconds per lap slower than they were in the race yesterday.
Out across the line comes Sasha Fenestraz. Lotterer is quickest at the moment. Fenestraz goes up into 11th spot as they come down in towards turn 1. There is the Nissan garage.
Marcel Volpe.
He's the only one there at the moment. Yeah. Where's everybody else?
Yeah. I can't tell you.
They don't rock up for FP1. Bit deep for Evans there.
Yeah, but it looks like a couple of lines here. You can go completely round the outside, or you can do a very, very late cutback and then effectively drive down the inside. But the important thing is keeping off the traditional racing line, which has got the rubber from it all the racing yesterday.
Last Jaguar 1-2, Alan?
Well, this is our first one in Formula E.
Yeah.
So I am going to be thinking...
For how long are you going to be
quite
thinking?
a long time. Yeah, because they didn't have a 1-2 in Formula 1, because they didn't win a Grand Prix in Formula 1.
No.
So therefore, you would probably go back to sports cars, and you'd be talking Tom Walkinshaw racing in the early 90s, Martin Brundle, Derek Warwick.
1991, the 430 kilometres of Nürburgring. It was Warwick and David Brabham won, with with Teo Fabi and David Brabham in the second car. Was Brabham in both cars?
I think you could do that at that time.
Really?
Switch cars, yeah.
The 2 Jaguars finished 6 laps ahead of the 3rd place Porsche. So there you go. First 1-2 for Jaguar in, how many years is that? 32 years. There you go. 15.5 minutes to go. Here are the Jaguars. That's why I was talking about them, obviously, because we're looking at them. And they won the race yesterday, 1-2. Evans across the line. It's amazing when you get these suddenly with slippery conditions, and then actually everyone's still separated by 0.4 of a second.
Yeah. At the end, it's a very, I would say, tight grid all the way through, and that's one of the things that we like about it. If you get it right, you're at the front, and if you don't get it right, you can be easily at the back.
Apparently, that same weekend of the Jaguar 1-2.
Just be aware, pit exit's only closed because we're moving the McLaren opposite direction. It'll go green again in just 2 seconds. So just
they've got
stand by.
Closed pit exit at the moment to move the McLaren down it. But yeah, apparently that weekend when Jaguar got their 1-2, you were racing in a Dams Lola T9150 at Brands Hatch.
Not for very long. The input shaft broke in the second lap, if I remember correctly.
Thank you to Sam Smith from the race for providing that particular piece of information. Here comes Bird, down into the hairpin of turn 9. 2 points now behind his teammate as they try and climb their way up the championship. the final corner at turn 10. And out over the start-finish straight. Freitz is back to being quickest on a 17.115. Bird up into second. Lotterer third, Dennis fourth, Roland fifth, Muller.
Muller's on a quick one as well. He's just on the fastest middle sector. Circuit's going to be drying up a little bit, but I think more importantly than that, the drivers are really finding their way around it, and also keeping some temperature into the tyre, gaining a little bit of confidence, knowing where they can push and where they can't push. As Nico Muller puts himself.
I'm happy with the pace. That's the fastest.
Well, Phil Ingram's happy with the pace. Rain today is meant to decrease as the afternoon sort of goes on. We're at high percentage chance of rain at the moment, but once we get to sort of 10, 11 o'clock, it really starts to drop off. So I think we're probably in for a dry race. It's today, says a camera, having a twitch on the way into turn 7.
Yeah, but even though they say a dry race, once it has dried up, the circuit will be in quite different conditions to what it was in the race yesterday. It'll be a little bit more like it was in free practice 2, for example.
Says a camera lighting up the rears a little as well. These Hancocks don't rubber in quite as much as the Michelins used to, so they sort of leave less rubber on the circuit than the Michelins did. By nature of being harder, really. And here is Robin Freitz then, who's having a fun time this afternoon. Oh, this morning, I should say. It's only 8:30, but he's done the fastest first sector of anybody, making his recovery and return after missing 4 races, having broken his hand, wrist, all sorts in his hand after a crash in Mexico. And he's 4 tenths up after the middle sector.
I'm sure that Thomas Biermeier, being well, local in some respects, ordered this rain for today and just hoping that it continues with this performance, because it's not just Robin, but it's also Nico Muller is up there as well.
Into the final corner comes Freitz. His first formulary victory came in the rain in Paris in season 5, and here he comes out across the line, and he goes fastest, a 1:16.794, which will just be a nice feeling, I'd have thought, for the app team. Don't they look thrilled? Roger Griffiths with Lotterer second and Dennis fifth. Here is Jake Dennis coming into turn 1. A 5-place grid drop for him, as we mentioned earlier today. But a good quali, and you can't. Three of the last 6 races have been won by drivers who didn't make it into the duels.
Yeah, shows you the sort of crazy race it was yesterday. I still, when I watched it back, I still struggled to actually follow what was going on, because there was so much action, so many lead changes, everybody trying to let someone else through, but that just created so many opportunities and people coming through that were out of position as well.
Yeah.
I think we've got to say that, because we talked about Antonio Felix da Costa. You know, 19th on the grid wasn't where we expected him to be. And so therefore it was definitely a case of people like him and Mitch Evans coming through from slightly less correct position on the grid.
Yeah. Here comes Dennis then up to the final corner of turn 10. His middle sector is a personal best, so he might find a bit of a chunk of time here. Maybe get up into 3rd position. Here he comes, he does. 3 tenths away from Robin Freitz. Lotterer second, Dennis third, Bird 4th, Muller 5th. And Rowlands and Evans 6th and 7th. Sam Bird reporting on the radio that the track is definitely getting drier. Here's the other Andretti of Andre Lotterer. He got some points yesterday with a 8th place finish. Yeah.
He had a 5-second penalty for an incident where he spun around Verne.
So let's enjoy this driving from Lotterer into turn 7.
It's a quick corner to be going through without any grip.
Yeah. 7 tenths down after the middle sector. Whoop. Whoop.
Just braking there as it was trying to recuperate some energy.
Now up towards the final turn. Would you do race running in this session? What would your sort of strategy be? Is it relevant to do race running?
It's relevant to try to get some mapping for your regeneration in the wet. and to make sure it's smooth enough and you don't get the lockups like we saw Andre coming into turn 9 there when it oversteered as he started to brake. It's not necessarily that relevant in other areas. I think the more important thing is working out what you need from the tyre to be able to make it work, what you need to do to the car if there's anything with the pressures, especially with the pressures in reality.
So just at a camera heading back out onto the circuit. What would you normally do with the pressures if it's raining?
Boost them up a little bit, you can do. But if you maybe need to do it more on the front than the rear, you wouldn't necessarily just boost them all together at the same point. And you can play with them to try to get a balance of the car for warm-up and also for a little bit longer. However, it's all relative to what the weather forecast is. If the weather forecast was consistently going to be like this, then you would do maybe a little bit more intensively into one area or another. If it's drying up, as we fully expect, it's going to be slow to dry up though, because it's quite cold. It's only 14 degrees, and that means that it doesn't evaporate very quickly, as we know. Then you would obviously do a slightly different program.
Yeah, it is the sort of weather, isn't it, where certainly for qualify, I can't see it fully drying up for qualifying in an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah, remember we're talking about concrete here and not Dan Ticktum does what Dan Ticktum does.
Oh.
Well, that wasn't the expected, but
actually,
fantastic recovery.
I think he kept it out the wall, didn't he? Wait, one way, the other way. Oh no, he did nudge it a little.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any damage. It's just kissed the wall. I'm sure that's going to be on social media very soon.
With lots of mean comments underneath, I would imagine.
Yeah, but certainly not from that particular part of driving.
No, exactly.
I have to say the Neo, though, has got zero grip. When you see it going around, it's just got nothing at all. Yeah, that looks fantastic.
He's messing around here, isn't he?
Yeah, he's coming into the pits now. It does look superb, however, it is not quick at all.
There is Dennis back in the pit lane then. He, Ticktum and Hughes are the 3 drivers in the pits. So Hughes has done normal running. He's not in the pits because of a RAST issue. He's done regular running, although he's a long way off the pace, 2.2 seconds slower than Robin Freitz. Here's Jean-Eric Verne. Field spread, as you can see, fairly big. 1.7 seconds from Freitz down to Fenestraz in 20th spot. The 2 Maserati MSGs a little off the pace. And Verne is the quickest of those 4 cars.
Push laps only. You have about 4 to 5 laps. Just explore lines, especially back to some dry lines in some corners if needed.
So yeah, you got 4 or 5 laps. Just push and explore. Oh, you can see when he turns the wheel, the car just doesn't turn at all.
I think they've switched tyres.
Ah, okay.
And so those will be cold tyres, basically.
Yeah, he's 1.8 seconds off. And presumably it's harder to get temperature into the tyres in these conditions.
Yes, much harder, because it's the same tyre that runs in the heat of the day or in New York in a few months' time, and so from that perspective, it is definitely much harder to get the temperature into the tyre. Even though we've been talking all yesterday about how it's such an abrasive circuit, it does help.
Yeah.
However, it does take a little bit of time.
So very new conditions for these Formula E drivers. Not driven these cars in the wet before. Here's the other DS Penske of Stoffel van Dorn, the reigning champion.
Yellow at turn 1. Somebody's had a little bit of a run wide there.
All going again now though. And Van Dorn into turn 6. He's up behind Sergio Sedicama in the Neo, who has so many twitches.
Yeah, but that area coming out of 6 into 7, Jack, as they're trying to get onto the power, looks to be very slippery.
Of course, most of them will just be running at 300 kilowatts of power at the moment, but in qualifying, if it's still this sort of greasy and you turn it up to 350, it's going to be even harder to get the power down. Van Dorn just backing off to give himself a bit of space, I think.
Yeah.
Muller goes to the top of the times. That App Cooper is flying in these greasy conditions.
It looks to be compliant because we're talking about the Neo and watching Dan Ticktum, but I also was watching SETI camera. As soon as it hits a bump or anything to unsettle it, the Neo's very unstable. Whereas when we were watching Robin Frins, it looked like he was out for a Sunday morning drive to go and get a baguette or something, but he was just nice and slow and smooth, and that gives confidence, and the confidence is what allows you to push.
Here's Mortara in the Maserati MSG. Again, they are 18th and 19th fastest at the moment. Coming through turns 4 and 5. Through the first sector, he's half a second away from Muller in sector 1 alone.
Yeah, that's a grip sector at the end of the day.
Now coming up towards turn 7. Oh, came through the order brilliantly yesterday, Mortara. Went from 11th to, I think he led at one point, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He did. When others took the attack mode, and he used a lot of energy to do it.
Yeah.
But Günther also had used quite a lot of energy, but managed to recover it towards the end of the race. So, you know, they did a good job to get themselves back on track.
A personal best in the middle sector. Buemi's on a quick lap, as is Freitz. Into the final corner. Sergio Sede Camera just up ahead as Mortara drives to the line. And what's this going to be for Edo? He remains in 20th place.
Oh, you're right, Sebastian Buemi's going to leap towards the front, I would suggest.
James Rossiter in the middle, Jeremy Colanson on the right-hand side. Here's the other Maserati MSG of Max Günther, second quickest for Buemi, so lost a bit of time in the final sector. 3 minutes remaining in the session. Here is the act of Nico Müller, who's fastest at the moment, and he's 600ths up in sector 1. We'll see how he's doing after the middle sector here. He's, again, still 600ths up. Things have never quite come together for Müller in Formula E. He had that one podium finish in that wild Valencia race a couple of years ago. But here he comes now in the apt car through the final turn and out across the line. Evans has now gone quickest on a 1 minute 16.376. What does Müller do? He goes back to the top. 1 minute 16.355. How can it be such a dramatic leveler for apt, this? Do you know what I mean? Like I think it's one thing to be like a bit better, but suddenly they're first and third in the times.
Yeah, and also it's not that it's just the car as well, because you've got Roland and Degrassi down in 13th and 15th, a second slower. And it's not a power mode thing. I think there's two things. One is that the car is clearly compliant to drive, and so they've got it in a mechanical setup that's allowing them to extract the most out of it. And the second one is that I'm a big fan of Robin Frins and Nico Müller in these conditions. You know, I said at the beginning when Robin popped himself to the front that he should be there, and Nico, I think, is exactly that same sort of mould.
It's no secret that I'm the founding member of the Robin Freitz fan club as well, so don't disagree. He's there in third place at the moment. Müller quickest. There are the two Envisions coming through. And running nose to tail. Buemi, a good first sector, 2/10 quicker than anybody else, but Müller is finding more time in the middle sector too. Freitz is improving in sector 1 also. Into turn 6 they come.
I think it's about going to be who's the last one over the line of this sort of top group, who ends up fastest. Because with 52 seconds to go, there's going to be one more lap for Buemi and Cassidy after this one. You can see just that if you look at the rear left tire, so our right as we're looking at it, it's completely dry now. There's no spray coming off it, a little bit of dampness just going onto it, and it went like a small sheen for about 1/10 of a second, but the circuit is pretty dry.
Buemi going in a bit too deep that time around.
I think actually that's his line. I think that's what he did last time and lost the time out of it.
Here he comes, and yeah, 4/10 slower than his teammate through the final sector there, Sebastian Buemi. With 15 seconds to go, they'll get one more lap. Sylvain Filippi watching on.
But it's Evans that's very quick in the middle sector now.
Yeah, in the Jaguar TCS racing car. Norman Nato jumps up to 8th place in the Nissan. Checkered flag is out. And here is Evans through the final corner. Is he going to end the session quickest?
Yep.
Well, Buemi's just started another lap, as has Robin Freitz, as has Nico Müller, although Müller's lost some time. Müller takes the checkered flag there and finishes in second position, or takes the checkered flag and remains in second. Tictum pops up into second spot. Da Costa goes 8th fastest. Here's the Mahindra across the line. And here comes Sebastian Buemi, the first of these two green cars, and he's got bulked a little by the DS Penske.
Got bulked a lot, actually.
And again into the final corner, that's Stoffel van Dorn.
He was quickest in the first sector, he was quickest in the second sector, and I think that would have propelled him to the top of the timesheets, but not with this one, I don't think.
Across the line, Buemi goes 4th fastest. Lotter is on a reasonable lap. Here comes Robin Freitz, takes the checkered flag, and he goes 5th fastest. Personal best in the middle sector. Dennis goes 8th. Lotterer is on a reasonable lap here as well in the Andretti. He's the second car to come to the line here, I think. No, that's the Nissan. Here he comes, Lotterer, 2nd quickest. So Evans ends the session fastest. Race winner from yesterday, and that's just got to be a huge... I know it doesn't mean anything, it's a damp session, it's free practice 1, but when you win the day before and you come in and you're quickest in FP1, FP3 as it were, it's got to feel quite nice.
Yeah, but I think the more important thing from Evans's point of view, from Jaguar's point of view, they know they've got a quick car in very hot conditions, very cold conditions, wet conditions, all conditions.
Yeah.
And so their car has got a wide working window, it's very adaptable, and that bodes well for the rest of the season for them, maybe not necessarily for everybody else.
Some cars not bothering with practice starts, the Porsches, I think, into the pits.
I would definitely have done a practice start.
Yeah.
Because you want to have that information. Even though it may not be relevant for today, it's still information.
So even though the track's drying up, 10 seconds off the pace in the end, those laps. Mitch Evans a 1:15.955, and we were looking at mid 1-minute 5s yesterday in qualifying. So I would suggest we're not going to get down to that pace, even if over the next, 2 hours, isn't it, till qualifying. It's still not going to completely dry up. I wouldn't have thought. You can see how damp it is up to the right-hand side. Here's a start with Ticktum. It's quite smooth, that.
It was. The initial acceleration had some wheel spin, but after that it was relatively smooth.
This is what happened to Buemi. Coming down into turn 9, went to the inside, and then, got balked by Van Dorn, and then majorly so on the exit also. Van Dorn won't receive a penalty or anything for that.
No, Van Dorn was just slower.
Yeah.
And Buemi was catching him very, very quickly. Van Dorn was totally in the right to drive where he drove.
Sylvain Philippi, and then Mike Lugg on the right-hand side, and Envision finishing that session 5th and 7th for Buemi and Cassidy. Practice start. Did Ras get back out? No, Ras didn't get back out. So that'll be a tough one for him, getting thrown in at the deep end a little with no experience of the damp track.
Yeah, but the circuit, even though it may not be fully dry, will be significantly different by the time we get to the next session in qualifying.
So Mitch Evans, who won yesterday, 1-2 for Jaguar, up to 4th in the championship standings. And he has carried on where he left off, really. Fastest in free practice 3, a 1:15.955. 800ths quicker than Andre Lotterer. Quarter of a second back to Dan Ticktum in 3rd. Then the two Swiss, Nico Müller and Sebastian Buemi, in 4th and 5th spots, with Robin Freitz in 6th. Great session that for Abt Cupra. They will be hoping that maybe a little more drizzle, wouldn't mind a little more drizzle, before the end of before the qualifying session anyway. Cassidy, Dennis, Da Costa and Verne, the rest of the top 10. Again, slightly concerning pace potentially for Pascal Wehrlein, the championship leader. We've seen he's able to come through the field though. De Grassi 16th fastest, Stoffel Van Dorn in the DS Penske down in 18th position, and the two McLarens 21st for Jake Hughes, and Rene Rast not setting a time. He drove out of the pit lane and broke down. They wheeled him back into the pit lane, but they couldn't get him going again before the end of the session. So, a couple of hours now until qualifying. Sebastian Buemi getting pushed back into the garage. But let's go and catch up with a man who is no doubt very happy after yesterday. The team principal of the Jaguar TCS Racing team is talking to us on the CB.
So, James Barkley, a dream day for the team yesterday, and it started pretty well today as well. Yeah. Honestly, 1-2 yesterday is something we've all been working incredibly hard for a long time now. So it's a historic moment. First since 1991, I think we said at the Nürburgring. So that's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, really proud. Those days are few and far between, but it's what we've all been working, pushing towards. The race was incredible. It was one of those scenarios you didn't quite know if you were going to be able to execute your strategy, but it came together perfectly. And the drivers, the team, everyone just did their job perfectly. But today, yeah, completely different day. Look at it, it's literally, you couldn't get more different, but it's nice for Mitch to be able to back that up with the fastest in the session here today.
Might not be necessarily representative for the rest of the day in terms of wet, dry running, but crucial data now. We've had an actual wetter session on these new tyres.
Yeah, it has been, because it's been a voyage of discovery, to be honest. We haven't had a lot of wet running. We had a bit in Valencia. So to be honest, yes, it's been just understanding what we think we need to do with the car. We learned a bit from that session. It seemed to work as well. So yes, and you just got to build confidence. It's so easy to make a mistake in those conditions. So I'm glad that one is over. We've got some good data to work on, and we can take it from there.
What was the word from Sam and Mitch and how the tyres were performing in the wet?
I think the key thing is just honestly building confidence. There's not a lot of grip out there, so it's just really about building the confidence as well as kind of bringing the temperature into the tyre.
Thanks very much, James. Cheers.
Thank you. So James Barkley making his way back into the garage. Mitch Evans making his way back down towards the garage. Josep Roca is race engineer there on the left-hand side. Having a mini debrief before the proper debrief. So session got underway. The third free practice session in damp conditions at the Berlin Tempelhof Airport. Jake Hughes was out on circuit, but unfortunately the other Neon McLaren of René Rast was not. Broke down on the exit of the first corner, leaving the pit lane, and that led to a red flag so they could push his car off the circuit. No running for Rast. Nick Cassidy, strong race yesterday. Went a bit deep into the hairpin of turn 10, but a lot of drivers did that. Just snatching the left front. Heading back out onto the circuit without any harm. The closest we got to the barrier was Dan Ticktum. Just a little kiss. That was all. In fact, it was just to help him rotate. Here we go again. Beautifully done. And this was Ticktum coming out of turn 9, having a slide as well. Just full. I'm sure that was just him messing around, though. I don't think that was him actually trying to drive quickly. Someone who was able to drive quickly with the Apt Cupras, someone who was blocked from driving quickly, was Sebastian Buemi. Probably could have been quickest at the end of the session, but as it was Mitch Evans in the Jaguar TCS racing car who ended the session fastest. But 14th fastest was Pascal Wehrlein. A little smile on his face as he walks back to the garage now, but there'll be maybe a little concern for Wehrlein after that, but also, is there any concern? Because he can come back through the field wherever he starts, Alan.
There's always concern if you're not in the top 10, because you're in that area where you can also get involved in incidents. We saw that yesterday, but ultimately he extended his championship yesterday by 1 point, even though he had a difficult day of it all. However, not as difficult as Lucas Di Grassi, who's a previous winner around here.
Yeah, it certainly is. Difficult time for Di Grassi and the Mahindra team at the moment. Envision getting stuck into working on the car. Sebastian Buemi heading out the back to chat with his engineers. Make sure you join us in just under 2 hours' time. You think dry qualifying's fun? Come back and try a little damp one. It's going to be a fascinating day in the Formula E World Championship. See you then.